Hello and welcome to Elemental Hardware Enrichment. My name is Aiden and today we're going to be building a projector. Before we get started with building, let's go ahead and introduce the supplies that we're going to need for this project. For our projector, we're going to need a damp rag, a bottle of glue, a hardware tray, some sandpaper, a hammer block, a roll of tape, a pair of scissors, and our safety glasses. Let's go ahead and put those on now. Now that we've introduced all of our supplies, let's go ahead and talk about the tools that we're going to need for this project. To build our projector, we're going to need a hammer or a mallet. Now that we've introduced all of our supplies and tools, the next step will be to talk about our parts. Let's go ahead and talk about our parts. The first parts I'm going to introduce are these pieces right here, and these are going to be our wall A pieces. Next, I have wall B and wall C. These parts are identical except for the brand on wall B. Next, we have the base. You'll notice one side has a channel running through it, and the other side has this through hole right here. Next, we have our projector tube and our cap. Finally, we will have 3 projector discs. Now, the projector discs are going to depend on the theme of your projector that you get. Mine is constellation themed, so I have Orion's Belt, Cassiopeia, and the Big Dipper. Now that we've introduced all of our parts, the next step will be to talk about our hardware. Let's go ahead and talk about our hardware. I have my hardware in this bag right here. I'm going to take out each piece and talk it through one by one. The first thing I'm going to take out is a square of double-sided tape. I also have an on-off battery pack, an LED light, 2 AA batteries, and the last thing I have in here is going to be our wire connector. Now that I've got everything out of my hardware kit, I'm ready to move on to the next step, which will be to sand my wood parts. Let's go ahead and get started sanding. First thing I'm going to do is set up my hammer block with my sandpaper to make a sanding block. So I'll go ahead and set the sandpaper so that the soft side faces up, and then I'll set the hammer block across it just like that so it fills the whole space. I'm then going to fold the edges of the sandpaper over the block just like that to form my sanding block. Next, I'll begin sanding my wood pieces. I want to first focus in on what's called the end grain edge. This is going to be the cut edge of my pieces and is usually going to be the roughest, so we're going to spend the most time sanding that. Let's go ahead and get started. Once we've sanded the end grain edges, we're going to go ahead and sand the veneered edges, which is going to be the top and bottom of the piece. We've done that with our first piece, so let's go ahead and repeat that with our remaining wood pieces. Now that we've sanded the end grain and veneered edges of each of our parts, we're going to actually remove our sandpaper from the sanding block to sand out some of the harder to reach areas. Now, if you take a look at our wall pieces, you'll notice that they have these protruding openings and end pieces here. And these are actually what are called mortises and tenons, which is a form of joinery that we'll use to attach our pieces. So the tenons on our B and C walls will attach to the mortises on our A walls. And what we want to do is just make sure to remove any extra material on our mortises and tenons so that they fit together nicely. So let's go ahead and do that now. Now that we've sanded all of our mortises and tenons, the very last thing we're going to do is sand out the channel on our base. So let's go ahead and do that. All right, we've got all our pieces nicely sanded, so now the last thing to do is just wipe up any excess dust. Don't forget to clean up your workstation as well. Now that we've gotten our pieces all sanded and cleaned up, we're ready to start our build. Let's start assembling the frame for our projector. The first thing that we're going to do is grab one of our wall A pieces and set it down onto the desk so that it lays flat. Next, we're going to grab wall B. Remember, that's the one with the brand right here. And we're going to go ahead and set some glue on either side of one of the tenons. So I'm going to open up my glue. And I'm going to begin setting a bead of glue on either side of the tenon. Not right on the top, because that's not going to actually make contact with my other piece. So I'll set some glue here on the side, here on the other side. Once I've got a nice bead of glue on there, I can go ahead and spread it out evenly using my finger. Now that I've got the glue spread out, I can wipe my finger clean, and I can begin to position my piece so that the tenon on wall B fits into one of the mortises on wall A. So I'm going to go ahead and start to line it up with my fingers, and then I can actually use my hammer block to make sure everything is straight before I hammer it in. So I'm just going to use that to line it all up. Once I'm happy with the placement, I'm going to hold it in place with my non-dominant hand and lightly tap it in with my hammer. Once I've got it all the way down, I just want to make sure that this is flush with the bottom edge here, and then I can wipe up any excess glue. All right, I've got wall B attached, so now we're going to go ahead and repeat those steps to attach wall C. So once again, I'm going to grab the piece and I'm going to spread some glue on either side of this tenon. Now that I've got the glue spread out, I can wipe my finger clean. And once again, I'm going to position it into the remaining mortise on wall A. Once I've got it in there, I can go ahead and make sure it's all lined up using my hammer block. And then I can tap it into place with my hammer. All right, it's all flush on the bottom here, so I can go ahead and wipe up the excess glue. Now that we've got wall B and C attached to our first wall A piece, the last thing to do to finish our frame is to attach the remaining wall A piece. So what we're going to do is spread some glue on both sides of these tenons. Once I've got the glue on there, I'm going to go ahead and spread it evenly using a finger. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to position my remaining wall A piece over the top so that the mortises align with the tenons in wall B and C. And the last thing I'm going to do is go ahead and tap everything into place. So I'll start on this side and I'll lightly tap a couple of times. Then I'll turn it around and tap the other side so that everything goes down evenly. Now I can just alternate back and forth, tapping both sides until it's flush against the other pieces. All right, it looks like it's pretty flush, so I'm going to go ahead and wipe up the excess glue. And the very last thing I'm going to do is just close up any gaps. So what I'm going to do is just rotate this around and tap on all the pieces to make sure they're fully secured together. All right, I've closed up all the gaps and now my frame is complete. So I'm ready to move on to the next step, which will be to attach our base. Let's go ahead and attach the base to the frame we just made. So I'm going to need my base right here, and you'll notice that the base has a channel running through one side. It's very important that that side faces up when you attach it to the frame. Now I want to decide which side of my frame is going to be the top. I have my logo in here, so I'm going to orient that so that it faces up, but it doesn't really matter. You can have it up or down, whatever you prefer. The next thing we're going to do is go ahead and spread some glue around the up-facing edge of the frame. Once we've got the glue on there, we can go ahead and spread it evenly using a finger. Now that I've got the glue spread out, I can go ahead and place the base right over the top and begin to align it so that it's flush on all sides. Once I've got it to a place that I'm happy with, I can use some tape to secure it in place. So I'm going to go ahead and rip off a piece of tape that's just a little bit longer than one of the sides. And then I'm going to align the tape so that it sits about halfway between the base and the frame to hold everything together. I'm going to secure it just like that, double check my placement, and then I can fold the edges in to secure it in place. Once I've done that on one side, I'm going to go ahead and repeat those same steps all the way around. And just like that, I have everything securely taped up so the tape will hold everything in place while the glue dries. Now we're ready to move on to our next step, which is going to be to begin to wire up our LED light. Let's get started wiring up our light. So the first thing that we're going to need is going to be our LED light. And you'll notice that it has these two wires here, one red and one black. If your wires are stuck together, you can go ahead and carefully peel them apart. And if you look around the edges of this light, you'll see that there are these little grooves. And what we want to do is kind of feed the wires into those grooves for now so that it'll fit into this circle in the center of our base. Once I have my wires kind of positioned, I can go ahead and set them through the bottom hole right here in the center. Once I have those wires into the hole, I can turn this over and gently pull those wires to pull the light into place. And then I can just kind of press it down where I want it. And you'll see I have my wires here protruding out the back. What I'm going to do now is begin to wire this up to my battery pack. So before I do that, I'm going to actually place my batteries. So we're going to go ahead and flip this over. So this side has the on-off switch. We're going to flip it to the other side. And you'll notice that there's three lines positioning kind of a triangle shape. I'm going to place my thumb on the largest line and push towards the smaller lines, and that'll open up the pack. Next, I'm going to go ahead and set my batteries. I want to make sure that the polarity is correct. So I'm going to ensure that my positive and my negative are accurately positioned. This side, I have my negative up against the spring, and the same side, or same thing on the other side. Once I've done that, I can go ahead and replace the battery pack and just make sure it clicks into place. Now what we're going to do is wire our light to our pack. So to do that, we're going to need our wire connector. And you'll see on the wire connector, it has these little paddles that are going to open up these little metal terminals. And that's where we're going to actually be placing our wires. So I'm going to start with my light here. I want to make sure that the wires from my light are sticking straight out. And that way they're going to make good contact with my terminals. Next, on one side, I'm going to hold down the paddle with my thumb and place the wire into the open terminal. I'm going to give it a light tug to make sure it's secure. And then I'll do the same thing with the remaining wire. Now I have both my red and black wire connected on one side. Red is going to be my positive and black my negative. And I'm just going to go ahead and do the same thing on the other side with the battery pack. I'm going to make sure that these wires are sticking straight out. And then I'm going to make sure that the red positive wires are connected to the same terminal. So I'll do that there with this one. And the black negative wires are connected to the remaining terminal. Now that I've got everything wired up, we should be able to flip the switch here and make sure our light turns on. And just like that, you can see that the light turns on and off because it's properly wired. So I'm just going to go ahead and pull this back down into the opening here. And what I'm going to do now is begin to mount my on-off switch and my connector into the bottom of my frame here. And to do that, I'm going to need my double-sided tape. And I'm actually also going to need a pair of scissors. So let's go ahead and grab those out. What I'm going to do is go ahead and cut this up into quarters. So I'll cut it down the center like that, and then I'll cut that in half. I'm going to use one of these squares for my connector, and then I'll use this piece here for my on-off battery pack. So I'm going to go ahead and open one side. And attach this to the bottom of the connector. And then I'll peel off the other side, and I'm going to attach this to the battery pack. Now it's really important that when you attach this to the battery pack, you attach it to the side opposite from the on-off switch. So the switch is here, we're going to attach it to this side. Now we can move this extra stuff out of the way, and we're going to go ahead and mount these into the bottom here. So I'm going to start with the battery pack, and I'm going to go ahead and mount it to one of these side walls. Now when I mount this, I want to make sure that the side with the on-off switch is facing up, and the side with the wires is all the way up against the wall like that. That way I'll still be able to remove it and switch the batteries if I need to. So I'm going to go ahead and peel off the other side of the tape. Make sure that my wires are all the way up against the wall here. And I want to make sure that the pack is not protruding past the bottom of the frame, so that way it can sit flat. And then I'll just push it into place just like that. Now when I'm attaching the connector, I can either attach it to the other wall or to the roof. I'm going to go ahead and attach it to the roof. And I've got it attached to the roof just like that. And now we can go ahead and just double check that it's all going to work. And I'm going to go ahead and flip the switch, and you can see my light turns on and off. And now we're ready to move on to our next step, which is going to be to attach our tube and cap. Let's go ahead and attach our projector tube. So what we're going to need to do first is spread some glue into this channel around the top of the base. So we're not going to spread too much glue, but we want to make sure we have a nice even bead going all the way around. And if you get any glue up here on the top, that's okay. You can just use your rag to kind of wipe it clean. And next what we're going to do is go ahead and position this tube right over that glued channel. And then we don't want to damage the tube with our hammer, so I'm going to place my hammer block over the top of that while I tap it into place. All right, and just like that, I've got the tube fully set into that channel. So I'm just going to check to see if there's any excess glue to wipe up. And the very last thing I'm going to do is go ahead and attach the cap. So if you take a look at the cap, you'll see that it has this ring around it. And you want to take a look at the bottom side where there's a little bit of a larger gap between the bottom and that ring, and that should just pop right onto the top like this. And just like that, your projector is finished and ready to use, but before we use it, I'm going to go ahead and get it decorated, so I'll be right back. All right, I got my projector all decorated and I think it turned out really awesome. I decided to go with kind of a black base coat and then do some sort of planet galaxy looking stuff around it to really match the constellation theme for this projector. Now when I'm ready to use the projector, I'm just going to grab whatever disc I want, set it into the top here, and then flip the switch on the bottom to project it onto the wall or ceiling. It really is going to work best in a dark room, so go ahead, take it home and try it out. I really appreciate you guys stopping by to build this with me on Elemental Hardware Enrichment. My name is Aiden, and I'm looking forward to seeing you on the next one.